If you have a 90mm macro lens and a 30mm macro lens and put them together, do you think it makes a 120mm macro lens? Today, I'll be switching from my favorite 90mm focal length to a much wider 30mm focal length and try to see which one gives the best result in different scenarios. I'll be pairing these with the OM1 Micro Four Thirds camera, some LED lighting, and my reversible column tripod. So my goal today is to experiment with a new focal length I never used before, which is the 30mm macro. I'm also going to show you some interesting camera features like focus stacking and focus bracketing, and hopefully we all gonna learn something today. Now let's go in the forest and see what we can find. Just found the first subject right there, which is a mushroom growing out of this tree stump. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is work handheld with my camera and try to find an interesting composition before putting the camera on the tripod. So I'm gonna guide you through what I'm seeing in terms of composition. I think there's a lot of distraction in the background. So maybe if I'm moving a little bit lower, you know, just like that, you can see how much the subject is now separated from the background. And I think in macro photography, well, in any types of photography, you really want to isolate your subject. So as you can see, moving a little bit more this way, I think I just found something really interesting right there. Look at this small plane leaning towards the mushroom. I think it's going to balance the shot. Yeah, I think it's going to be something just like that. So what I'm gonna do now, I always like to underexpose the shot slightly, probably around 2 stops, to get some space to add light without, you know, overexposing the shot. I'm gonna put one light on the right side right there, and you're gonna be able to see in real time the effect of the light, because I want to illuminate the side of the stem right there and this small plane. Try to show you how small movement can really do a big difference. So if I'm moving the light a little bit more this way, I think it gets too much of the background right there. So I'm gonna fade it probably just like that. So as you can see, with one light only, you can really do some magic here. So now I'm gonna show you with the other light. So in terms of the height here, right there, you can see the difference. I think this is a little bit too high. I'm gonna try to get it a little bit lower so it lit up, you know, the bottom of the stem right there. Look at the difference, a little higher, a little lower. I think that's the perfect spot. In terms of setting here, I'm gonna focus tag the image because I wanna keep that background really soft. But obviously I could have used an f11 aperture to get the whole mushroom in focus, but I would have lost the soft background. So in the camera menu, you have the focus stacking feature, which usually do everything in camera, but for this shot, I'm gonna use focus bracketing. So I'm gonna put focus bracketing on. After that, you can set the number of shots. I'm gonna set it to 15 shots. 2-second timer to make sure I don't introduce any shake. So now that I tried the 30mm lens with this subject, I'm just gonna quickly swap the lens and see the difference it makes with a 90mm. So as you can see now, I'm a little bit further from the subject because obviously I'm using the 90mm. To be fair, I used the same lighting, so I didn't change anything with the light positioning because I want to do a fair comparison to, you know, to see which of the lens give the better effect, because I think they're both completely different shots. I thought it would be the 30mm, but now with this angle, I'm not sure. So what I love to do when I'm focus bracketing is always make sure I'm focusing on the closest part to the lens of the subject, and then hit the shutter and let the camera do the rest. All right, so look what we have here, an interesting mushroom, a dark mushroom growing out of this fallen tree. So for this composition, I chose the 30mm macro because I want to incorporate a little bit more of the scene. And I think if I'm using the 90mm, it's going to compress the shot a little bit too much and we're not going to be able to see, all the details around the mushroom. So basically what I'm thinking about, I think I'm going to get a little bit lower because I want to see the bottom of the mushroom because the white gills are pretty interesting. So it's going to be something like that. So now I'm going to get my tripod and play with some lights. So what I like to do is always start with one light at a time because other than that, everything's going to get messed up and it's going to kind of be hard, to see which light have which effect on the subject. Another thing to keep in mind is always underexpose the scene a little bit in order to make some room for these lights. I'm going to start with a yellow tinted light just to get some nice halo around the subject. All right, so now I'm gonna stick this right there. All right, so I think it looks pretty good now, but there's something missing on this side. I think it's too dark, so I'm gonna fill it with another light just like this one. All right, so that looks pretty cool in terms of composition, like the lighting. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna focus stack the image, but I think I'm gonna use the internal focus stacking feature because it's gonna give me an idea of how many shots I need to get the mushroom all in focus. And then I'm gonna focus bracket the image because personally, I like to do it manually in post-processing. So again, it's important to focus on the closest part of the subject to your lens. And then the focus stacking is gonna go throughout the mushroom. I think this feature is great for those, who like to take a lot of shots and don't like to take a lot of time in post-processing. All right, since it's a micro four thirds camera, I think it's important to mention that it is not really a 30mm lens or a 90mm lens, but the equivalent is more of, for the 90mm, it's 180mm focal length and the 30 is a 60. So really what I meant in the beginning of the video when I said that my favorite focal length was 90mm, I was more trying to say that I love longer focal lengths rather than wider lens. But it might change today. All right, so now we're back where we started and I'm not getting inspired. I'm not seeing anything. What I think I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start gathering stuff on the ground, put it on the bridge and try this longer focal length and maybe make a little miniature studio right on top of the bridge. Yeah, let's do that. I finally settled on what will be my next subject. It's going to be this small tiny branch with the small cocoon on it. Not sure if it's a cocoon. Anyways, I'll write it down right there. And this piece of moss that I'm probably gonna use as the background. Try to get something steady here. There's a lot of moss on the ground and the ground is really, really soft. So I'm gonna need to dig the leg of the tripod in to make sure everything is nice and steady. Let's start with this small LED light just to lit up the side of the subject, something just like that. Now I'm going to use another light and try to create some highlight in the background. So I'm going to put it behind the moss, maybe something just like that. Obviously there's something missing. I want to lit the front part of the subject a little bit more and maybe the side of the stem. And now I'm going to use my app to dial in the correct intensity for the lights. Again, I'm going to focus bracket the image. I'm going to focus on the closest part of the subject, just like that. Hit the shutter button. Again, let the camera do the rest. All right, so now just to make a comparison between the two focal length again, I just swapped the lens to the 30mm lens, and obviously I had to get a little bit closer in order to fill the frame with the subject similar to the last shot. And for this one, instead of using the focus bracketing, I'm going to use the in-camera focus stacking because I don't want to put too much time on this shot because I know the other one's going to be better. And let me know in the comment which one of the two you prefer. All right, so which lens I prefer? The 30mm versus the 90mm. I'm still loving more the 90mm, or the longer focal length, should I say, but the 30mm I think is really interesting if you want to incorporate a little bit more of the surrounding and, you know, get a little bit more context around your subject. I think it's fun to have in your bag, probably, you know, to experiment, because photography is all about experimentation. The biggest takeaway I think I have today is not even about the focal length itself, but more about the lightweight of this system. You know, I'm carrying a lot of gear making these videos, and I can see how cool having something that light in my bag can be, at least for my shoulders.